Hey everyone, Sparks back with another Goddess Victory Nikke video. I have finished building my Anise. I am doing testing with her, but before we actually get into the shooting range, TLDR, Anise is good, okay? Make sure you pull for Anise. She is very, very good. But before we do the more power-related testing, I want to show you just how she works with the re-enter, okay? So some people are confused about this. She says she re-enters if she's with a burst 1. We also have Ava Star, which is like a re-enter thing as well. So let me show you how this is supposed to work. So in our first scenario here, I've actually put 3 burst 1s, a burst 2, and then a burst 3, okay? And I put on the simple burst animation so we can see clearly when each person enters the burst. So let's go ahead and see what this looks like. You're gonna see that this is going to flow naturally just how you would expect this to go, right? So we'll go ahead and take a look at Anise. She's going to burst first. Then she goes into Miranda, and then we go to Naga, and then we go to Snow White, right? So Anise was a re-enter, the next one was Miranda, and then Miran just didn't count, right? Because she's not a re-enter. And then we got to our normal burst 2 and our burst 3, right? And of course, in a real scenario, we'd want Miran to be a burst 3 so we could keep cycling like normal, right? Okay, so that is how it's supposed to work, how it would work in a typical situation if you're using her with another burst 1. Now, what happens if there's like all burst 1s? Because something interesting about Ava Star, the way her skill is worded, it says affects all allies re-enter burst stage 1. So it kind of implies that it's going to make all these burst 1s re-enters. So watch what happens when we go in here with an entire team of re-enter burst stage 1. We are going to burst with Ava Star. We could put Ava Star or Anise in either order, it doesn't matter. But she's gonna burst, then Anise goes off, then she goes to Miranda, and then at that point it messes up, right? We can't go past that third one, okay? It's not going to work with keep like infinitely cycling through burst 1s. Now let's go back out, and we'll take a look at one more scenario where we have Rupee, who is our OG re-enter burst stage 1, and we have Anise and Ava Star. So last time we burst with Ava Star first, and then we went to Anise. This time we've changed the order, and then again we have a normal burst 2 and a burst 3. So if we enter the shooting range like this, watch what happens. We are going to start off with Rupee. She will now trigger Anise, who skips Ava Star and then goes into our burst 2 and our burst 3. Okay, so anytime it's reading another character that says re-enter, we're going to have an issue. So we can't go stacking more and more and more burst 1s. Okay, so I just wanted to make that clear. This only works, and I don't even know why you would want to do that, but the most you can stack burst 1s is in this scenario here, where, well, I mean, there's multiple scenarios, right? But you can only go through the 3 of them, right? Otherwise, you're going to stop because you can't just keep going back and forth between burst 1. Even though with like Ava Star here, she says that she gives everybody re-enter burst 1. But again, we are going to stop after we get through that third one, and that's going to be it. Okay, in reality, you probably don't even want to use Ava Star, and most of the time you don't want to use Anise with any other burst 1s at all. So let's go ahead and get into the testing and show you damage numbers. All right, so we're in the shooting range, and I have a team set up here with Snow White, my favorite unit, and more importantly, this is just a really powerful team. So this is what I would normally put up my highest DPS from basically any comp, and our burst 1 you can see here is Siren. So this is going to be our baseline, and then we're going to run the exact same team with Anise by herself, okay? We'll get to like re-enter burst stage 1 things with Anise as well, and I'm also going to do some electric teams with her being compared to Cinderella. So we're going to see results for all of this, but first we're just going to see like no elemental advantage, a very strong team that I know can put up crazy damage, and then again just swapping out Siren, who is our current best burst 1, and then putting in Anise instead and seeing if Anise can keep up. I'm curious to see what you guys say in the comments below. Maybe you've done your own testing already. or you've cheated and looked ahead in the video, don't do that. Let me know what you think is going to be best here. Is this team with Syra going to be better, or is it going to be better with Anise? All right, so let's see what the results are. Again, this was a single target boss. We are putting up 13.3 billion damage, okay? All right, so now we're going to run the same thing back, but with Anise. Okay, so we're doing the same thing with Anise this time, fighting the exact same enemy, same team otherwise. And the first thing I want you to notice is just how insanely fast we go back into burst cycle. It just ended, and it goes right back. Like, less than 2 seconds between burst cycles. That's an astonishing burst fill speed. So Anise does have cooldown reduction, as well as that burst gauge fill speed, and we're full again. Like, what? This is a more dramatic effect than I would expect. This is an astonishingly quick, fast burst gauge speed. It makes me wonder if the wording is wrong, if she's ramping this up way more than it implies. I mean, it's kind of crazy. Look at this. And we're back again. Like, we're almost never out of full burst. And that is reflected in the damage. We previously did 13.3 billion, and now we did 16 billion. That is extremely impressive. I mean, Siren is the best burst one, and Anise just crushed it. Okay, if you need any more endorsement from Anise, I don't know what to tell you. Like, I mean, this is pretty insane. She is even better than I expected, and I expected her to be good. That is very, very impressive. Okay, so as far as like her individual damage, it's pretty good. I mean, look at this. We're close to Dorothy here, who is extremely built and a DPS, one of the best ones. She's obviously far away from Snow White, but my Snow White is extremely optimized. She's like the best unit I have on my account. So now we'll check and see how she does against Cinderella, okay? We'll see. I think that she's gonna for sure be the best electric burst one, since she's already the best one, even not in an electric composition, and maybe she'll even be like the best DPS or second best DPS. Let's see. Now we're running the electric team, and for a long time, Rouge was best in slot for burst ones on electric teams. Recently, she has been overtaken by Maran since she got her insane upgrade with her treasure, and this is like the premier electric team. Now, one could argue that you could put Crown in here, but I often run Bunny Aid, and if you're doing like a Union raid, typically you're going to want Bunny Aid in the slot, but whatever it is, we're keeping it consistent, right? So let's see what the damage is here with Maran. All right, we did 7.6 billion. Now, this might look a little low, but remember, there's no elemental advantage here. We're still fighting things that do not have elemental advantage, just to kind of keep things, you know, from being too influenced by like someone having a lot better lines of elemental damage. Okay, so 7.6 billion. Let's go ahead and swap out Maran and put in Anise. All right, we're already doing way more damage, as you can see. It hasn't even quite ended yet, and Anise is far outscaling the damage that Maran could give this team. And look at that fill speed. This team is a little bit slower than the other one, but it's still really crazy. Like, Anise is obviously adding a lot of burst fill just on her own being a rocket launcher, but just, I don't know, I feel like that increase is bigger than the math suggests. I don't know. There's something a little weird there. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's just me, but doesn't it seem super fast to you guys? Anyway, total damage 10.9. This is a dramatic increase. I mean, what did we do? 7.6, and now we did an extra like 3.3. Like we basically did like 40 to almost like 50% more damage. That is pretty crazy. And in the race for damage, I mean, Cinderella still is dealing the bulk of the damage. Now, I have to say, you know, my Cinderella is at like core 4, and Anise is only limit break 1, or yeah, I guess limit break 1 is how you say it. She's at 1 star. And also, I haven't had time to totally optimize her lines yet, whereas Cinderella has all of her elemental damage and attack and everything, right? But clearly, it's funny to have Anise and Anise on the team. Dude, they work really well together. So now we have Anise in the re-enter burst stage 1 format, where we have another burst 1, this time being Moran, since Moran is the best electric burst 1 to pair or put here if we didn't have Anise, right? And we can see that the damage is actually quite simple. We're still getting quite similar. We're still getting a lot of benefit here. We're doing over 10 billion, but it is less. We're doing about 10% less damage than if we just had her on her own. And there's a couple of things that change here, right? I mean, there's just a lot of variables, right? Because we're no longer getting the Winter Maiden benefit, right? But we are getting benefits from Moran. But it also changes Anise's kit, right? So she's using different buffs than if she was in her, star on her own or whatever it's called mode, right? So there's a lot of variables going on here, but that's like the reality of using a unit in, a real world scenario where you're trying to make like a raid team or something like that, right? So definitely still usable, but I think the optimal way is to have her on her own. And we're going to try this for our other team here with that we used with Snow White as well. And I'll take out our buffer Privity. But again, I feel like that might be a bit of a too high of opportunity cost. Now looking at our Snow White team here, I put Miranda because Miranda is another good burst 1 for Snow White. And again, we want to try and test this re-entering burst 1. The problem is this really tanked our damage, okay? So not only did we lose the buff from Privity, we got a good buff from Miranda, but now we have no burst cooldown, okay? And this is kind of the big problem with making Anise the re-enter, because she loses the cooldown, which means you have to use one of your other burst cooldown units with her, like we did with Moran. So this really tanked our damage. We did like 16 billion before with Anise on her own. So now let's, try and make this a little more fair. Instead of using Miranda, we'll put Siren in here and see if we can make that up at all. So we got Siren back in here, and you can see the damage is definitely getting better because we're able to at least take advantage of that insane burst fill speed that Anise offers, and then we have the cooldown to keep up with it from Siren. But even then, our damage is far less. So we're doing 16 billion compared to 13.4 billion now. I think the answer is really just, you're going to want to use Anise on her own. I mean, and there's a lot of reasons for that, right? Because if you use her with another burst 1 that doesn't have burst cooldown, then your damage is going to be way worse, obviously, because you don't have any cooldown and you have to wait to go back into burst. You're also losing the DPS from Anise, right? Because she's just going to deal a lot more damage as like a secondary DPS in that kit rather than the kit that she gets when she re-enters burst stage 1. And additionally, probably the biggest factor is that you lose the opportunity to use another key unit. So whether that is another burst 3 DPS or a key buffer for that element, it just kind of messes up those like ideal compositions. All right, so that's the end of our first impressions testing and kind of clearing up some things on how Anise works. Hopefully that convinces you. Anise is absolutely worth it. She's crazy. She is now the best burst 1 in the game. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean she's like going to be the best no matter what in every scenario. Siren still has the useful ability to make everyone target the same thing even when you're not in full burst. Although Anise will keep you in full burst almost every moment of every fight with her burst gauge fill. And then, still in other cases, Rappy might even be able to do more damage because whether she's a burst 3 or a burst 1, she still does some pretty insane damage. And there might be scenarios where you just need to survive, right? And Moran is extremely resilient, and so you're still might use her in some scenarios. I think the top 5, though, have pretty clearly turned out to be our new queen being Anise, followed by Siren, and then I would say Rappy, and then Moran, and then Leader. Leader's still hanging on to that top 5 spot. But again, if you're doing a solo raid, a lot of the time Rappy is going to be a burst 3. So at that point, for your 5th burst 1, you're looking at doing like a shotgun team with Tuve, or maybe some shenanigans with Miranda. It kind of like it gets more interesting there when you're finally talking about your fifth team. But Anise, really, really, really good. Let me show you my build for her. So we currently have her at Affection 19 and 1 Limit Break. And I gave her the Resilience Cube, which I do think is going to be best in slot. Although one could argue for like the Charge Speed Cube, but I think Resilience is just going to be the answer there. I maxed out all of her skills to 10. By the way, we can do skill resets. We have a week to do this. Subscribe for the video on recommendations of units to reset. I am still going to make that video. And then, of course, I maxed out all of her equipment. And here are the overload lines. I got some pretty good ones, but she's not totally optimized. So I wanted to save some for Anise when she comes out next week. I mean, for Neon when she comes out next week. But I got a crit rate, charge speed, and attack on the helmet. And then on the body, attack, blue line of charge speed, and defense. Defense, actually a decent stat there for Anise, although I still wouldn't actually roll for defense. But probably better on Anise than anything else we've had so far. And then elemental damage, a blue line of max ammo, and then charge damage. And then finally on the boots we have attack and critical damage. So yeah, we got what? 3 lines of attack, a little bit of charge speed, some crit, some ammo, some elemental damage, but she can still get better. She can still get better. So if we're looking at like her solo damage versus Cinderella, I think she could definitely ramp up and get a lot closer to her, although I still expect Cinderella to be stronger than her and still keep that like top spot as the best DPS. But I mean, she's the first one. She's the first one, right? Very, very good. All right, whoa, okay, I just randomly got a sub on YouTube. Spinalisk, thank you. I'm not even streaming. Whoa. We got more subscribers. The co-subscribed. Thanks for the support, guys, getting in on the YouTube video. Anyway, I will of course be streaming tomorrow, and I will do more like in-depth reviews on these units towards the end of Anniversary, and of course polls for Neon and testing for her when she comes out as well. All right, thanks for the support, guys. Hopefully this video was interesting. Anise is amazing. She's one of my favorites. I'll catch you guys in the next video or stream. Peace.